early October 2008, the national debt clock in Times Square, New York stops running after the debt reaches $10 trillion. The clock simply runs out of digits to keep up with the fiscal policy of the government. The clock has been operating since 1989, when the national debt was only $2.7 trillion. In today's culture, when talking about national debt, the words debt and deficit are being used interchangeably. However, those two terms are not entirely similar. Deficit is the amount of money the government owns at the end of a certain year, and debt is the accumulated deficit over many years. With the deficit rising nowadays, the Obama administration has cut back in its spending to $1.5 trillion from $1.8 trillion. Before the financial crisis, national defense is one of the biggest sources of government spending in the past decade. With the global war on terror at hand, the U.S. government currently allocates about more than one-fifth of its total spending on national defense annually. There are some doubts about future spending on national defense. However, at some point the war in Iraq and Afghanistan has to cease, and it will be necessary for the government to cut back spending to the pre-war level. Starting in May 2009, the annual Social Security benefit exceeds the annual payroll taxes. This is due to the rising unemployment rate, the aging baby boomer population, and the rising cost of living. If the government continues to run Social Security the way it has, then by 2013, the program will become a major drag on the national budget. When the financial crisis hit, one of the first victims is the auto industry. GM, Ford, and Chrysler come to the government for help numerous times. However, the government refuses to hand out aid until those three can provide Congress with a detailed plan of fixing the company structures. They obey in early 2009, and the U.S. government rewards them with a $15 billion bailout. The banking business is both the backbone for the U.S. economy and responsible for the financial crisis. Due to the fact that most of them have become too big to fail, the U.S. government has to increase its deficit spending and bail the bank out with a package that was $700 billion. That money will ultimately come out of the taxpayer pockets, so most people are not happy about the decision. The two bailout plans may not have been enough spending for the government. The Obama administration decides to increase its fiscal policy with the hope of spending our way out of the financial crisis. They passed a stimulus package that worth more than $700 billion, with about $200 billion allocating for tax cut and the other $500 billion for creating federal work projects, similar to the New Deal in the 1930s. The U.S. has borrowed money from numerous countries in recent years. The three biggest lenders for the U.S. are Japan, China, and the U.K. The total debt we owe in those three countries are over $1 trillion. Our government has to come up with a way to pay up those debts and keep their accountability in front of foreign nations. Otherwise, we may not receive aid from those countries in the future. Some economists have warned that the rising national debt can have some serious effects on the value of the dollar and the rates of economic growth. With the government accumulating more and more deficit, the value of the national currency will decrease. It will lead to an increase in interest rate and inflation, which will discourage many companies from investing in capital goods, thus lowering the economic growth rate. One main solution to the national debt problem is raising taxes. This increase in taxes can come in many forms, including income tax, national sales tax, and tariff. Some have proposed that the government should raise income taxes for everybody, from poor to rich, with the same percentage. Raising taxes will not be popular among the American public. However, it is a necessary step we must take in order to prevent the national debt from getting out of hand.